Coming up on this episode of Iowa Life, we celebrate the reopening of a small-town grocery store.
I did this because the community needs it, because I love the community so much.
We'll tour the magnificent stained glass windows at St. Luke's in Dubuque.
There are 110 windows. It's the 5th largest collection in the country.
We'll learn more about what it takes to pursue college-level gymnastics.
The daily challenges is what drives me to do this. It's a new thing every day, and it just pushes you to be better.
And we'll remember President Nixon's visit to Iowa in 1971.
I want those decisions that affect rural America made by people who know rural America.
It's all coming up next on Iowa Life.
Funding for Iowa Life is provided by
The Pella Roll Screen Foundation is a proud supporter of Iowa PBS. Pella Windows and Doors strives to better our communities and build a better tomorrow.
and by the Laney Grimm Fund for Inclusive Programming at the Iowa PBS Foundation.
Hi, I'm Charity Nebbe, and this is Iowa Life. I am standing beneath an extraordinary collection of stained glass windows at St. Luke's United Methodist Church in Dubuque. We will learn more about what makes this church so special in a few minutes. But first, consider what happens when a small town loses its grocery store. It becomes a lot harder to get fresh food, but residents also lose an important social hub. The whole community suffers. When Mulholland Grocery in Malvern burned down in 2021, Tom Mulholland knew that he needed to rebuild.
Malvern's an old town, 150 years old. Rolling hills all around it. 30 miles from the Missouri River and the border. We're 30 miles from the state of Missouri. It's a beautiful small town, but we're close enough to the city, to Omaha. We've got a lot of good things going on in this community. And that's one of the reasons why it was so important to rebuild my grocery store after the fire. I had gone home about 5:15 that evening, and 15 minutes later, one of my employees called. I hadn't even taken my coat off. I was just sitting in my chair relaxing. And one of my employees called and said, "You've got to get back down here. The store's on fire." And I ran in the front door and I opened the door to the back room, and I couldn't even see my hand this far in front of my face. The smoke was so thick and black. There were 27 fire departments that showed up that night to help fight the fire from all the little towns. There were farmers that were bringing water in tank wagons and things. The fire continued for hours.
Mulholland Grocery could not be saved. The store was gutted, and 2 days later, high winds knocked down the only brick wall left standing. The store had been a fixture in Malvern for generations, and because it was the only grocery store in town, the loss was felt immediately.
My great-grandfather started this store with a partner as a dry goods store back in 1875. It used to have everything that you needed because people didn't commute to Omaha. When I was young, there were 4 grocery stores here. There was one right across the street. There was one down the street. There was one up on top of the hill, you know, and now for 3 years, there was nothing here. So people's diets changed. People were buying, maybe going shopping every few weeks or once a month or something like that, relying more on boxed goods, relying more on canned goods instead of fresh products. You know, you couldn't get any fresh meat, any fresh produce or vegetables. It took me about a month to decide that, yes, I was going to rebuild. There were so many people that were doing whatever they could to help support me and to show me that they were going to be there, that, you know, I knew that's what I had to do. It was very difficult at times, but then there were also so many good things that happened. Thank you very much. Have a good day. You know, my store is smaller than what I had before, but the space is laid out much better, more efficiently. We've got new equipment instead of the old equipment that we had, so there's a lot of things that are better. My utility bills are half of what they were before the fire. I started cutting meat in my dad's store, his partner's store, when I was 18. I'm known a lot for the sausages that we make. I make potato sausage, a Swedish potatiskorv, that people drive 3 hours for to pick up every year from Ames. I'll tell people on Facebook that we just made a batch, which is about 28 pounds or so. Doesn't make it through the day. This little tiny store has sold over 600 pounds of ham salad since we opened. You know, and I'm out at the moment. It helps the rest of the store too. I said people may be coming in for the meats, but they're going to grab a head of lettuce. They're going to grab a gallon of milk while they're in here. And that helps turn those things over faster and helps improve our purchase power. But it doesn't just help me. You know, they stop at other businesses and tell their friends about what they found in Malvern.
The day they opened, I walked in and went, yes, because it was so amazing to have them back, to know that instead of having to get in the car if you forgot something and run a distance, you could just come up here. But I think the biggest thing is all of a sudden Malvern is complete again. We have our own grocery store, and it makes a town a town.
I've had so many people that have donated to try to help us and to get us to where we are. I still went into debt $750,000 to get this store open, but I did this because the community needs it, because I love the community so much. I want this store to be here for the next generation, for the next 20 or 30 years, for this community, because it's important. People don't want to move to a small town that doesn't have a grocery store, but one of the other things is that small businesses feed off of each other, and it's important to be here.
St. Luke's United Methodist Church in Dubuque has more than 100 windows created under the direction of Louis Comfort Tiffany, making it one of the finest collections of Tiffany stained glass in the Midwest. It is also a treasured spiritual space for the community.
I've had a lot of people say, you know, I've never seen those windows. I didn't even know they were there.
Nobody in town knows that it exists.
In 1893, parishioners of St. Luke's congregation commissioned Louis Comfort Tiffany, the son of the famed jewelry maker, to make stained glass windows for their newly built church. This was after seeing his work displayed at the Chicago World's Fair.
There are 110 windows. It's the 5th largest collection in the country.
Dubuque has a lot of art, and the windows, I think, are just part of that. They show that this has been established for a long time. Anybody that says they don't know about it, I say, well, just come. I'll show you around.
Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to St. Luke's. Thank you. There you go.
So where is everybody from? Missouri and Illinois. In 1896, there were 5 windows in place. Those are...
Pay attention to the faces. They're always beautiful, very often expressive.
Anyone can walk in off the street and say, whoa, those are beautiful. But when you know something about how they're done and what went into it, you see them on a deeper level.
While Tiffany used many new and different techniques to make his stained glass stand out, Favre glass was his most well-known. With help from a chemist, he used high temperatures to infuse the colors into the glass while creating various textures and densities. He later patented the process.
They're not made like that anymore, and we've learned a lot about how they're made.
The window production was done in a studio where Tiffany only hired single women for their dexterity and because they wouldn't be bothered by the demands of children and home life.
The women who worked in Tiffany's studio had different titles depending on their jobs. There were the cartoonists, who transposed the drawings from the small scale to a much larger grid on a glass easel. There were pickers, women who picked out the glass to be used in each window. And there were cutters, women who snipped the glass and attached it to the easel using beeswax. Tiffany would then come and either approve the women's work or shatter it with his cane.
We're doing what we can to preserve the art. So many of his creations have been destroyed or lost, and you see them on Antiques Roadshow, that they've been purchased at garage sales, and nobody knows what they are.
After over 100 years, the windows were badly in need of repair. The lead was getting soft, causing the windows to sag. Years of using coal to heat the church had obscured their vibrant colors.
It was in about the 1980s they started fundraising for the restoration. I remember as the Angel in the Lilies window, her hands were black and as were her feet, and after she was cleaned, you could see her fingers and her toes. All the restoration is funded by people who come and see the windows and make contributions. With the restoration, people have become more aware of how unique they are, and they've become more of a valued treasure.
People come because this is a large collection, and they're large windows. They just come to see what Tiffany's really like. They don't have to go to a big city, or they don't have to go to a museum. They can just come here to Dubuque, and here they are, just waiting to be seen. I've had several people who say they don't know how we can even listen to a sermon with these windows, and a lot of people just like to sit and just look at them.
Cherishing what you have and taking care of that piece of history is important.
It takes talent and dedication to pursue gymnastics at a collegiate level. Athleticism meets artistry at Simpson College in Indianola, where both the men's and women's gymnastics teams have achieved some remarkable milestones.
In the simplest terms, gymnastics is mastery of movement. Learning how to move and use your body in ways that a lot of people would think impossible.
Simpson College decided to add women's and men's gymnastics in September of 2021. Myself and my husband decided to make that leap together and go through that interview process and take those positions and move down here. Now we just finished our third year as a program. The big thing, especially with that first class, was that we didn't really have anything to show them. So that just required a lot of buy-in on their part to help us create a program here. Morgan Speck is our first senior. That very first year, she was our only Iowa athlete on the team. Prior to Simpson adding gymnastics, Simpson was not even really on her radar.
We have found a place that gymnastics is attractive to. You know, at this point, between the men's and women's programs, we're at 49 athletes. That's a big number in 3 years for an institution like Simpson that's looking at 1,200 students enrollment. Men's gymnastics, there's only 15 programs in the whole country, Divisions 1 through Division 3, and there's only 3, including Simpson, that are Division 3. So for us to add another program is just a huge piece to show that we can grow. An Olympic sport, a non-revenue sport, can grow in the current NCAA environment.
Being a part of a new program and creating a legacy that no one else has done before. All these teams are being cut and we're finally adding a new team. It's something very special and important to me. I was around 10 years old when I first started gymnastics, and I'd say just the daily challenges is what drives me to do this. It's a new thing every day and it just pushes you to be better. So in the past I've qualified to NCAA championships the last 2 years, and that's definitely another goal of mine this season. Being able to compete at such a big competition with, the best athletes in the country, it's truly an amazing experience.
Some of the meets at the beginning of this year, we went against really big schools. We went against Michigan, we went up against Air Force, Stanford, OU, really top dogs, contenders for the NCAA title. I was able to win the P-Bar event title against the Naval Academy. It lights a fire inside of me to get even better, to do even more. As a gymnast, I'm focusing on achieving the best work that I can possibly do. And that takes everything from me. There's a lot of days where I come in and I'm tired, I'm hurting. And, I'm thinking to myself, like, man, I don't really know how I'm gonna get this done today. But, I gotta focus up and like really think about what I wanna get out of that day. And how can I make that day a success, no matter how I feel.
Gymnastics is one of those sports that you start when you're really young. Some people call it an early specialization sport. So I started gymnastics when I was 4, but didn't really get into it until I was 8 and went to the University of Denver. And my senior year, I competed beam quite frequently. Beam, you have to be calm when you're on that event. It requires a lot of mental focus and concentration.
Before my beam routine, I walk over to the chalk, I wipe my feet in there, I wipe my hands on there, rub them together, and then I just walk up to the beam. I do a couple taps, and then I'm more of just the type of person to lock it in, get on the beam, and do what I know how to do. I actually had elbow surgery in the summer, so I was very uncertain what this season was gonna look like, and fortunately I was able to get back at the end of preseason and make beam and floor lineup every single meet. I was throwing up the highest scores I've ever thrown up, and I was genuinely having fun, and I think at the end of the day, that's the best thing I can ask for. It's just enjoying what I'm doing and excelling at it all at the same time. To be a successful gymnast, it takes a lot of hard work and drive, and you have to be able to be really resilient and have that grit and know that you're gonna be knocked down so many times and you're gonna be expected to get up and do it all over again because you have to fail to succeed. And that's not just something that you have to do in gymnastics. It really just translates well into life.
I started gymnastics when I was 7, but I had like a couple baseline skills before that. And yeah, I've been doing gymnastics ever since, so I think that's about 13 years. Usually when I'm competing floor, I'm mostly just feeding off the energy of my team, and I also think about trusting my legs, so trusting all the training that we put in preseason and all the cardio that we've did to prepare. I think gymnastics will benefit me really well throughout life. It's taught me dedication, resilience. It's taught me how to be a leader. I feel like I've already become a totally different person that just works harder and is just dedicated to finish everything through the best that I can.
So I started gymnastics when I was about 2 years old. So I'm going on almost 20 years of gymnastics, which is crazy. That's my whole entire life. The vault I do that qualified me to nationals is called a hand front half out, or the book term is called a hand front tuck with a half twist. It's a 995 start value, so a 9.95 is the closest start value you can get to a 10.0 in college. It's a forward entry vault, which is not something that you commonly see in women's gymnastics. I put in so much work into that vault and into my gymnastics, and seeing it pay off in the scores and in the event titles, and then obviously now qualifying to nationals, I think is just really rewarding for me.
We bring value by bringing in quality student athletes. That's how we bring value to Simpson. I think it's a hopeful story, and it's a positive story for all non-revenue and Olympic sports. Find the ground underneath you. Bring your feet to the spot.
I hope that more schools start up a program and give athletes the opportunity, because that's really what men's gymnastics is for me. An opportunity to continue my dreams and to continue in the sport that I love.
Before we say goodbye, let's dive into the archives to remember President Nixon's visit to Iowa in March of 1971.
It's a long way to come for 8 electoral votes. Of course, they'll drop in for a day around election time. But on March 1, 1971, it was different. Richard M. Nixon went out of his way to come to Iowa. He hadn't been here since the election, but it was worth waiting for. In his executive wake came staff members, cabinet members, governors, 3 airplanes, 2 cars, a brood of Secret Service men, the Eastern Press, and Mrs. Nixon. Now, that sort of thing hadn't happened since Franklin Roosevelt participated in a farm conference at the Capitol in 1936. Furthermore, it was announced that the president would address the legislature, which, as far as anyone could tell, had never been done by any president.
Chicago car lot meat trade yesterday. Beef trade was slow. Choice steer and heifer and utility cow beef all were steady.
This is Leonard Dooland, and he's a farmer. He farms about 700 acres just outside Nevada in Story County. On March 1st, while Richard Nixon was preparing for his trip to Des Moines, Leonard Dooland was doing his chores.
I think that a person should look up to the president regardless of what he done, because he's bound to have been a pretty fair sort of a man in order to be president. And I've always felt a person should look up just a little bit. Or people should respect him enough not to even hold any demonstration against him.
The family farmer is going to be out of existence. Private enterprise are going down the drain.
Nixon carried the state comfortably in 1960 and 68, and whenever he came, the nation's breadbasket more closely resembled a May basket. But of course, that was before Laos, before the lowest parity since the Depression, and before suspension of the law requiring union wages on federal construction projects.
Lessons of the past decades mean anything to us, they mean that as power has been concentrated more and more in Washington, D.C., as decisions have been increasingly made by remote control, the special needs of our rural communities and of the great heartland of America more and more have either been neglected or even gone unrecognized. I want those decisions that affect rural America made by people who know rural America. And the people who know a place best are the people who live here. The best fed country in the world pays less of her budget for food than in any country of the world. This is an indication of what the farmer has done for America. And when the farmer and American agriculture has done that, when it is the most productive of all of the various phases of our economy, certainly American agriculture and the American farmer deserves a fair share of America's increasing prosperity.
Today in Des Moines, I think he'd have more, or could do more good if he'd have stayed in his office that day, because I can't, from what I've read and seen on television, I really can't see that he's accomplished too much by coming out, and I realized that it must have cost quite a bundle for him to come out here and visit the Midwest. And I think this is maybe a vote-getting thing for the next election. Now, again, this is just one man's opinion. I really can't see what good he done.
steers and heifers were fully steady. Demand only fair for clean-hided cattle, as they say it. Slaughter steers, choice 1050 to 1250.
That's it for this week. Thank you for joining us as we explore a few of the ways that human endeavors make our lives richer and more meaningful. I'm Charity Nebbe. See you next time for more Iowa Life.
Funding for Iowa Life is provided by
The Pella Roll Screen Foundation is a proud supporter of Iowa PBS. Pella Windows and Doors strives to better our communities and build a better tomorrow.
and by the Laney Grimm Fund for Inclusive Programming at the Iowa PBS Foundation.